From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Ticats This Week with RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker.
This is the final edition of Ticats This Week for 2022. I'm RJ Broadhead. He's Luke Tasker. We had a lot of fun in the broadcast booth this season, Luke. It was one of those years where it was the box of chocolates. You never knew what you were going to get from the Tiger Cats. And I was told a long time ago in my career that a team that's around 500 is always the best to cover, because there's some bad stuff, but it's not all bad. And there's some good stuff, but it's not all good. So you do get a variety of storylines. But it just seemed like maybe the Tiger Cats ran out of steam in the Eastern semifinal. Every game was a real battle for them all season long, all 19 games. They really, you can't say they had a game where they could just put it on cruise control. Yeah, it was unfortunately maybe one of their worst football games that they were a part of, which is just a strange way to end the year. But, a loss is a loss, and maybe it's honestly easier to swallow than if they would have, say, played really close and then lost a close in the fourth quarter. And that said, they had an 8-point difference with the ball in their hand in the second half. And so it wasn't like they got blown out of the water, but right away in that first quarter, things just weren't looking right. And you knew it was going to be an uphill battle. So let me go through a few of the things from that final game, which really were uncharacteristic of the Tiger Cats, especially the way they finished the season with those 4 wins. So they never led in the game. They had their largest halftime deficit, trailing by 16 points. They allowed 14 points in the first quarter. The first quarter was really their strength all season. To put that into perspective, they allowed 14 points in their previous 4 games combined. In those wins in the first quarter, they allowed 14 points. They allowed that many against Montreal and really put them behind to begin the game. In fact, it was the only game all season long where they allowed 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. You just didn't expect that. Yeah, and Trevor Harris came out really, hot. They put together a beautiful drive to start the game, the Montreal offense. And Coach O mentioned this too. It's not like Hamilton came out and had no production, but they had to settle for field goals. And then before you knew it, it was a 13-point spread or pretty quickly there. And Trevor Harris just had a really great first half. Yeah, he was not missing. It was. If you're not a Ticat fan, it was impressive football to watch. Yeah. He really was clicking with receivers, and their running game was good. I went back. Tiger Cats didn't have a touchdown in the first half. It was the first time in 13 games they didn't have a touchdown in the opening half. So just another odd statistic that went against them. Well, how many times have we seen this year where the Ticats have had a great first half, especially early on, and then they couldn't find, couldn't keep that momentum going as they entered the second half. And yeah, this game was different. Like I said, 13 times in a row, they had been able to score a touchdown at least in the first half, and not that night. Yeah, it was just a really odd game. 6 quarterback sacks allowed. That was the most since Game 1 against Saskatchewan, when they allowed 8 quarterback sacks. That was a surprise. The rushing game was non-existent, 37 yards, only 1 first down. 1 first down from rushing. Even on short yardage, that would be a rushing first down. That seemed like a really low number to me, and a bit uncharacteristic the way Wes Hills and Sean Thomas Erlington had been running previously. As the Ticats finished their last 6 of the 6 games there of the season, the run game was really starting to come around. I mean, things were really changing, and Wes Hills had that really impressive game at home. Still some injuries they battled, including Wes Hills as the season went on. And then it never seemed to get back to that peak. There was like 2-3 games strung together of a really, really impressive run game. I think that they go into this offseason kind of still so that's still something that they've really got to figure out and try to regain some control there going into this 2023 season. Because you're right, in that playoff game there was you need that 4, 5, 6 yards on first down. When you want to call on your run game to get that, and without it, there's too much hanging on the shoulders of the passing team. And the way that East semifinal went, the first half, the only receiver was Tim White. Wes Hills caught a pass, but that was out of the backfield. And so you're really one-dimensional. If you're not running the ball and only one receiver is catching a pass, that makes it pretty easy for the opposition defense. So just that variety of receivers, the running game, it's a Grey Cup year. They're hosting the Grey Cup, the Tiger Cats are in 2023. So I have a feeling the game was Sunday. On Monday, the regroup and meetings began to figure out what needs to be put in place and acquired or moved to win the Grey Cup for the first time since 1999. Would that be accurate?
I was surprised. In the Coach O Show, the final episode that we recorded earlier this week, I asked what his November, December looks like, and Florida was not mentioned in the answer. They're in the offices right now. They're working and stuff, and of course they take time off. But it sounds to me like they're going to wait. They'll move those vacations to the new year. They're gonna start thinking about making the move, making their off-season game plan here, and it sounds like they get to work on that pretty quick. So, yeah, I think it's going to start taking shape. I don't know how much news we'll get as onlookers. I don't know how quickly some of that's going to come. Some may come before others, but certainly, we'll be hearing about moves as far as roster spots, actual player positions, well into late spring. That happens all through the next months, but who knows what we'll hear in the coming weeks. They're certainly working on it right away.
Tim White, fantastic year, finished fourth in receiving. What's your evaluation on his season?
Well, really impressive. I mean, you think back to maybe what the offense would look like without him at times, and the answer is, not much probably. I mean, he really was the guy making the big plays. Of course, Stephen Dunbar had a good year. He was reliable. He stayed healthy. And that was, good to see as well. And then you have a number of young guys who I'm sure some of them are going to be around and be making plays in the future. But they're missing, some depth and some experience there.
Braylon Addison.
Certainly Braylon going down is just one of the notable sort of, maybe as I look back, honestly, it might be the low point of that mid-season for me, is when Braylon had the unfortunate injury and was found that he would miss the rest of the season. You look back and things could have been different with him in there, and that was a real damaging blow for the Ticats.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Luke. Just imagine if he was there, and you've got Tim White with the season he's having, and Stephen Dunbar. Kind of interesting stat with Stephen Dunbar. He scored the Tiger Cats' first touchdown of the season and their last touchdown of the season. So he bookended it, and maybe that'll give him a good feeling going into next season. Seth Small, we should talk about him. I would have to think he's going to get some looks from the NFL. He finishes on a streak of 11 straight field goals, had the longest in the CFL this year at 58 yards. But it was, I could kind of feel how a coach feels when Seth Small goes out there. You're almost know he's going to make a field goal and are shocked if he doesn't. He just has that confidence and that ability. Did you feel the same way? Yeah,
he was a feel-good aspect of the Ticats this year, and that's great when you have guys. It's great when you have those receivers who you think, okay, we're gonna move the chains, call that play, and it'll happen, and certainly there are quarterbacks who play that way as well. In fact, to be fair, Trevor Harris it's almost like the playoffs start, and it's like, okay, he's really going to make some plays, like he's going to at some time. So, and we have a lineup of quarterbacks ready to play in the division finals that's going to be interesting to watch as well. And it's like any season when that falls short. You're looking to go get some of those guys. Probably, I won't be surprised if we see some, not necessarily quarterbacks, but guys who are playmakers and big time guys, maybe come to Hamilton this offseason.
It is a topic, the quarterback position. I don't know how healthy Dane Evans was all season long. It seemed like he was injured pretty early and just couldn't get back to 100%. Matt Schultz had flashes where he showed maybe he could carry a team. How are you feeling going into the offseason and looking ahead to next season with the quarterback position?
I don't know, and I agree. I don't know if maybe if Dane has some health things that he has to figure out. I kind of would doubt if you see the Hamilton Ticats season start with Dane and Matt in the same position as they are right now. I think something's going to give. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see some shakedown at that position. But it's hard to say, because if there are some things that we don't know about as far as physical health goes, then that sort of trumps other things, But going into that Eastern semifinal, it seemed to me that they trusted both of those guys to be out there and to play at their best. And so, health or no health, that they were in the position to make the plays. And there was just such inconsistency all year, whether it be in turnovers, on-field play, or just availability due to injury. And so some changes I would expect.
I learned how important the offensive line is this season, just with injuries and guys in and out, and they finally seem to have it figured out late in the season. Not a great game against Montreal to end the season, but previously it really seemed to help the running game, protect the quarterback, and that's an area that sometimes gets overlooked. But like I said, I learned that can really make an offense, having a really good offensive line, or break one if your offensive line isn't very good.
I think that's one of the positives of the storyline of this season, was how poor that unit was in the beginning of this year. 8 sacks in the opening game of the season in Saskatchewan. Just a tough battle ahead of them. Chris Van Zyl struggling with injury early on, and then again later in the season, and ended up not playing for the remainder of the season. Brandon Revenberg, as always, and continued to be an anchor. And then, of course, David Beard. And as the second half of the season rolled in, that group kind of found themselves. However, RJ, you and I were talking, the playoff game was kind of a different story from the turnaround that they had made.
Yeah. The rushing game, non-existent, 6 quarterback sacks. It just seemed to go back to game one. But part of me thinks Tiger Cats just ran out of steam. Like, it was just a battle, game in, game out. 7 of their 8 wins this season went down to the final 3 minutes. They just didn't have anything come easy. Do you ever remember a season like that when you were playing, where every win you just had to fight tooth and nail right to the very end?
It actually reminds me of 2014, which is the year that we started our home games at McMaster, because Tim Hortons Field was still being built. And there was all sorts of conflicts going on there, but we had the season, actual regular season games at McMaster, not just the preseason. And it seemed not only like we had to battle, everything go right to get a win. It was like we were playing really good and still losing. Things were really coming together, looking good, and we'd still lose. I think we started that season 1-4 or 1-5, and then we went to the Grey Cup in BC that year and lost. And it was and then it was just a turning point. All of a sudden in the season, Zach Collaros was healthy at that time, and all of a sudden we kind of found ourselves, and then went on a really, really hot streak at the end of the year with some really impressive offensive numbers that year. The Ticats, it's amazing to me that the only game that was just like an outright easy, like got it in the bag win was against Winnipeg, who is mid dynasty right now, and that was, nobody would have thought that was going to happen. There were a few actually out there, as I would be sorry to say that you can go find some of the talking heads around the league who did have that prediction that the Ticats would win, but not many people thought that, and the Ticats played it great. Other than that, they were 8-10, and all the 7 other wins were hard fought. And you're right, RJ, that Eastern semifinal with Montreal, they were going to have to grind it out one way or another. But to me, it was a story of Montreal just having too much of a lead too quickly.
Yeah. It was a good start by Montreal. They did their homework. Turnovers. That was a major story that wouldn't go away for the Tiger Cats, and in a negative way. The fourth quarter was really shocking. 31 turnovers in the fourth quarter alone, and allowed 106 points off of those turnovers in the fourth quarter. To put that into perspective for the Tiger Cats, they had their most takeaways in the fourth quarter, 10. They didn't score any points off of those takeaways. So it wound up being a decisive part of their season, the reason for a lot of losses. Looking back, is there any explanation? Because the coaches knew, the players knew. Is it just bad luck? Chalk it up to one of those years, and hopefully you learn from it?
It's really hard because I want to say, or I know in my heart, it's not just bad luck. It's micro decisions being made on the field. Literally, the decisions between lowering your shoulder or spinning away from somebody. It's a micro decision, meaning do I leave my one hand out and kind of try to stiff arm or shield my body with my one arm, or do I just right away 2 hands over the ball and iron crosses? These tiny little decisions. Of course, in the decisions of quarterbacks and receivers come into play with interceptions. And it just can't be overlooked. And so it's those little things, but those things can be reinforced and coached, and they are. And you can bet Coach, like in the Coach O show, he was dumbfounded. He's like, he really thought, he goes, I really thought we were going to Saskatchewan this year. I knew it in my heart. And in doing so, I'm sure we would have broken some kind of record for having finished negative 22 on a season and then been in a Grey Cup or won a Grey Cup. And who knows? That's an interesting stat, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was right. Because it was amazing that they were winning games like that. And there was a couple, I want to say 3 games that they won where they had a negative turnover ratio, which is unlikely. It was a problem. I asked Coach, I'm expecting him to have off-season move answers. I go, what are 3 things the Ticats need to do to win a Grey Cup? What's at the top of your list? And the first one he says is, you got to stop turning the ball over. You can't turn the ball over. Like literally, it is championship, pending. Like it's that crucial that when you mention the Grey Cup and what to do, the first answer that came out of his mouth was stop turning the ball over. And so you can bet for what they'll find new ways to coach it. They'll find new ways to talk about it and to reinforce it. What's that movie where the guy has to walk around college all day and can't fumble the football or he's kicked off the team? Like whatever, they'll find new ways to reinforce it, but it's a must. And it comes down to firstly the quarterbacks, because they touch the ball on every single play, quarterbacks and centers. And then it comes down to the ball security of anybody who's carrying the football on a given play, returners, receivers, running backs, and you start there.
And just to reemphasize, they had the better turnover ratio in 5 games. They won all 5 of those games. Mm-hmm. So it is a thing, but it was just really obscene. They allowed the most turnovers and had the fewest takeaways. So it's one of those seasons, really impressive that they made the playoffs, started 0-7 on the road. I really think they could have gone 8-1 at home and probably should have. Those early games against Edmonton and Calgary at Tim Hortons Field, should have won those. The only legitimate loss was one that doesn't sit well with Ticats fans, but on Labor Day, the Argos did beat the Tiger Cats, although Dane Evans and Matt Schultz both were out, so they were down to their 3rd and 4th string quarterbacks, so that would have been a tough one to win anyway, but just found ways to lose. But then in the end, I'm proud of the team, because there were a lot of times, Luke, where I tried to put a positive spin. It looked like, and I was trying to get you to say must wins very early in the year, because it felt like that. If they dug too much of a hole, that they just wouldn't be able to get back into it. And they seemed to win at the right times. Again, nothing was easy, but it was, to make the playoffs, I think, after that start is a real accomplishment. Starting the season at 3-9 and then finishing 5-1. Yeah,
the 5-1 is just really, really an amazing feat at the end. And even those games weren't coming perfectly or really all that pretty.
Except for the Winnipeg, they were all one-score games.
It's crazy. Except for Winnipeg, it's just really funny how that goes. And Dane Evans had a dynamite game against Winnipeg. I mean, it's a really impressive offensive battle in Winnipeg, and that's how it goes. It's tough, RJ, because this is what I always recognize this as a player too, and it's true now that I'm on the other side of this. It is harder for us, meaning you and I fans, onlookers, it's harder for us because we now have no control. Not that we have any control over the season, but we don't have any control until things get started again. It's not as hard for the players and coaches. It may hurt a little more. They may remember it longer, the losses and the playoff losses. It's not as hard for them to go into the postseason though, because or the off season, excuse me, because they control things. Each player is like, you know what? I've got to increase my strength in my lower body. Like I've got to do a little bit more legs in the off season. So I'm a little bit less, or a little bit more, less injury prone, and I'm a little quicker in and out of this cut here and there. I'm going to work on my hands. So I don't want to drop anything I'm not going to have one drop next training camp. Quarterbacks, or I'm going to watch my film that my visualization film for my quarterback reads in the secondary 3 times a day. Like they've all got their lists, and they're ready to go, and they've got 6 months to get better, and the coaches are hitting the ground running with meetings. We all just have to sit here and wait for half a year, and it eats at you because all you want to do is, oh well, we should have had the run game, and we turn the ball over too much, and that's all true, and there's nothing we can do. So you feel free to feel bad for yourself because we have it the hardest.
We do, and they sympathize and pity us because we got to go through an off season of practicing our touchdown calls and wide receiver screens. Yep. I want to talk about the 11 East Division All-Stars the Tiger Cats had, which tells me they were better than their record showed to lead the East Division. On offense, Tim White, yes, Stephen Dunbar, Brandon Revenberg. On special teams, you got Seth Small, all deserved. But the 7 players on defense, it really tells the story of what the Tiger Cats' strength was this season. A lot of games, the defense was able to keep the game close and give the Tiger Cats a chance to win. When you look at that defense, how much would you change and how much would you want to keep together? It seemed like it was pretty good.
Yeah, I think you retain as much as you can, Micah Johnson, Ted Laurent, obviously they're some of the longest tenured players in the CFL. If they're healthy, if they can come back, great. If you have to make moves there, that could be something that's on the mind of this team. You hope Dylan Wynn's health and recovery from his injury is quick and complete, and he comes back as a full Dylan Wynn, which I expect that he does. That was a big loss as well. And the only reason that stands out in my mind less than the Braylon Addison is because the defense, was able to rally around that position group so well, and their level of play stayed high. Braylon Addison was a clear drop off in the offensive production and for what he has to offer. But really, really impressive. And that meaning of the entire defensive, I loved watching them the whole season. It was really, really fun. It was a fun part of the year. And it goes back to one of your first points we made, RJ, about how strange this playoff game was, because especially in those first couple drives, I mean, they really had trouble, slowing Trevor Harris down, so uncharacteristically so. But then that second half really liked how they tightened things down. They brought more pressure. We'll see if you can keep that level of defensive play and then add in, a more consistent offensive attack. That's what, 1 or 2 games automatically swing your way if you can add just a little bit more, and all of a sudden you're 10-8. And if that offense is really, really productive, all of a sudden you're 12-6 and you're fighting for first in the East, and so it doesn't take much. And the unfortunate story of the defense this year is how good they were. You have to be fair in that turnover ratio. They're part of that too. And an inability to take the ball away is just as costly as a habit of giving it up. And so, that ratio, was definitely due on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tiger Cats, after all the ups and downs, they were 2 points away from hosting a playoff game. So let's talk about the teams that are left. Just a quick recap. Let's start in the West final. It's BC and it's Winnipeg. Winnipeg going to try to win it again. Been there, done that. There has to be a factor in the game with that, but I'm all in on Nathan Rourke. The fact he was able to come back and that receiving core of BC's, they have a ton of depth. That's the depth the Tiger Cats probably would have had if Braylon Addison was there. But he's got so many options. I think he's really good. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an upset with BC beating Winnipeg. What do you think?
I like it. In fact, of the 4 teams left, I think that BC is the most well-matched against Winnipeg. Good defense. Adam Bighill has been an unbelievable player for his whole career. Really, it's an impressive group. Their defensive rush is great too. I'm talking about Winnipeg. Their secondary has struggled at times this year. And so I think Nathan Rourke has a chance to really, really put up impressive numbers in a playoff game here. I think, Winnipeg can run the ball well. Zach Collaros wins games sometimes throwing for 250, and they can make that happen. They have a very impressive offensive line. Winnipeg does. If the weather cooperates in Winnipeg and allows for good passing conditions, I really think Nathan Rourke and the BC Lions have a chance to do that, to make that upset.
Yeah, good point with the weather.
And we'll see. I mean, if that weather they say is the equalizer, I don't know. I think Winnipeg would maybe have an advantage if the weather gets goes sour during that game, just with dominant line offensive and defensive line play and an effective run game. In the East, RJ, it's hard to even think about. I mean, it's tough. The Ticats have beat both those teams this year. They did not play well in the Eastern semifinal, but certainly could beat Montreal in a given football game. And of course, you could say the same about Toronto, though I think Toronto actually played Hamilton better than Montreal in the season. You brought up the Labor Day Classic. That was sort of a low point in the season for the Ticats.
Yes.
The way that day went, and of course breaking the streak of victorious Labor Day Classics. But
yep.
I do think that Toronto has the hand. I will not be surprised if they defend their home field and show up at the Grey Cup.
Yeah, it's again one of those games, and I also think if the Tiger Cats were in it, it would have been kind of the same. Yeah, Toronto finished first in the division, but it's not like they're a huge favorite. Andrew Harris will be back. That should help Toronto,
yeah.
But I was pretty impressed with Montreal last week. So I wouldn't be surprised either if they wind up going to the Grey Cup. And just from a CFL perspective, I think it would be good for the league to see Montreal win a Grey Cup. They haven't won since 2010. The fans, they came out for the semifinal.
They did.
So I think in Montreal they want to see a winner, and I think that would help the CFL. And Toronto's won, and still sometimes the attendance isn't there. So hopefully it's packed at BMO Field for the East Final. But it should be fantastic for the final 4 teams. Unfortunately, the Tiger Cats aren't one of them, but it has been an entertaining season. They were entertaining, and Luke, great job all season long. I learned a ton from you and had more laughs than ever this season. So we had a lot of fun. Thanks for the great season. Oh,
thank you, RJ. It was a blast. You are a pleasure to work with in the booth there, and yeah, listeners would not. They may not expect it. We have a lighthearted booth. We have a good time up there, yes. and it is the best way. I had fun playing football. I never wanted to be over the top serious. I didn't work that well, and broadcasting is no different. Apparently, it is a blast up there, and I can't wait. God willing, that we're back next year. Well, the bosses, Dave Cadeau and Peter McEwen, both fantastic to work with. They like to play along and have some fun. And Jeff Girodet in the booth, and Michael Steyer, the technical director. He really kept things together a lot of times behind the scenes. Yes. Even in that East semifinal, we weren't sure technically till about 40 seconds before the game started. But Michael did a great job. So a little inside info there. And hey, that's part of our job, is to not let the listener know that things are going sideways on the other side of the microphone. Right. No, it was great, man. It's a really fun group, and a very, very tenured professional group. I mean, with the exception of myself, it's a lot of veteran professional broadcaster, and it's a privilege to be a part of it. Well, you're a natural, Luke, and it's been a lot of fun. Hopefully, we're back again in the booth next season. Yes. And again, great job, and great job on Ticats this week. Yeah, great. And thanks, listeners. It's been a fun year. Hopefully we'll pick it up right where we left off.
Absolutely. For Luke Tasker, I'm RJ Broadhead. Thanks for listening to Ticats This Week all season long. And of course, thanks for listening to the Ticats Audio Network.
It's been another busy week for your Hamilton Tiger Cats. Luke Tasker and RJ Broadhead have covered it all, and now we would like to hear from you. Email us anytime at gameday@ticats.ca. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.